This very rough plot, you can see there are weeds, and yet you can see it's a resemblance of something having been planted. We have actually planted beans in this very rough land with a lot of weeds. We planted just a while ago, and now you can see this gentleman is spraying a chemical. This chemical is herbicide. This chemical will go into the roots of the weeds, and it will kill those roots, those weeds right at the roots. Meanwhile, the beans will be germinating. So by the time the beans have germinated, this chemical would have killed all these weeds, and therefore the need to do weeding, physical weeding, will have been reduced. This is, I discovered, is like now the modern habit here in Kimilili, in Bungoma, that to reduce the cost of weeding, we can spray the land with that herbicide. It kills all the weeds at the root level, and therefore by the time the beans will be germinating, because it only attacked the roots of plants, by the time the beans will be germinating, the herbicide would have done its work. It will not affect the new, the seeds of the beans, and therefore the beans will grow without competition from the weeds. So that means that the first weeding has been done, and when by the time the weeds appear again, it will be probably when these are 2 months maturing beans. The weeds, by the time they appear, the beans would have been ready and will be harvesting, and therefore we would have avoided the cost. You know, in this 1 whole acre, the seeds or the weeds, or rather the chemicals that go into this 1 acre, cost me 700 Kenya shillings. But weeding or plowing an acre would have cost me 5,000 in this part of Bungoma. So 5,000. Now the labor, this man now is going to bring more water, put in water, and mix the chemicals. As I say, it's in this acre, the chemicals that I've bought is 700 Kenya shillings. And this gentleman is doing the spraying. It is not taking even a day, not even half a day, because it's just an acre. And I'll give him 1,000. So 1,000, and that's like is on the higher side, but that is it. 1,000, you add on 700, 1,700, and I would have avoided paying 5,000 for the traditional approach to planting. So this is the first time I'm doing it. I'm doing an experiment, and therefore I'll be able to write a report on this approach to farming. I want to repeat, this land, you can see we had planted in maize. We planted maize, and September, we harvested the maize. The next season for maize will become in March. And therefore, rather than leave the land fallow, so that I can use the 1 acre all year round, we had to look for short season crops, and we settled on legumes. The legume also improved the structure of the soil. The legumes, with their nitrogen pods, and therefore now between the planting season of maize, we put in the legumes. The legumes will improve the soil, and therefore when we come to plant again maize, one would have earned some money from the period in between the periods of planting maize, would have generated income. The soil has not deteriorated because the beans improve the soil. And even when we come to use fertilizer to plant maize, we shall use less. And would have done probably what we call crop rotation. So that if, let's say, there was a disease that was left behind by the maize, it will now probably be eliminated. So we are killing a number of birds with the same stone. We are doing crop rotation by planting in between maize seasons, planting short maturing crops. We are reducing the cost, the inputs, cost of producing agricultural costs. The weeding has been reduced, the cost on the weeding has been reduced. And food security is being increased. And this is probably even when we talk of President Uhuru's 4 agenda, food security, manufacturing, healthcare, and affordable housing. Like the 2 pillars are being tackled here, probably even 3. 1, food security is being achieved because we're using the same plot of land to produce more food than what would have done using the traditional method. So food security, we are contributing to food security. We are going to contribute to manufacturing because after these beans are out and maize, we want to add value. We don't want to go and sell raw cereals and so on. We want to make flour. We might want to add value onto the beans, and therefore manufacturing, and you can call it rural manufacturing if you want. And beans themselves have medicinal value. And again, if we are going to get food security, enough food, and therefore we are also like chasing away diseases, associated diseases when people go hungry. And therefore the 3 pillars, the manufacturing is taken care of, the food security is taken care of, then the health, as when we reduce numbers of people going to health centers because they are eating a balanced diet, then indeed we are contributing towards the health. And stop to think about it. It could even be housing. We could be thinking of the stalks of maize that came here. How can we produce some building materials, cheap building material from it? When we harvest the beans, the remnants of the beans. Of course, more manufacturing, we shall be producing fodder. We have a workshop in this compound, fodder from the stalks, fodder from the cobs that when we remove, we shell maize. So animal feed is also being produced here. So my plea is for our agricultural departments at county level, we need to educate our small-scale farmers. As I said, this is just 1 acre that they are doing. We need to educate our small-scale farmers to have a multi-purpose approach to their small plots of land, to have value addition processes for their products. And indeed, at the bottom of the pyramid, at the grassroots level, we shall be able to contribute to the food security and to the 4 agenda of the president. So this gentleman has just come back. He's spraying this. 700 Kenya shillings can buy the chemicals to spray a full acre. This is what he's now doing. And this spray has to take about 6 or so hours to reach the depths of the roots of these weeds. So if we spray and then the rain comes, it will be suicidal, so to speak, because the chemicals would have gotten wasted. So you can see this gentleman has started early in the morning spraying, and there is a lot of rain here in Kimilili, Bungoma now, this season. The rain will come at around 3 o'clock, and therefore he's spraying now, and in 4 hours, in 5 hours before the rain comes, the chemicals will have sunk into the soil, and they attack only roots. No kola ne kacha kunga karyo kalachi changa pakazi no lolela na molela molundi. Zenda wonandi kaka habachaza kumasafu. Ndiko rendo manono ne kacha kunga ko ngene kalola mu kalachazi ne kola nini. Mwiloba ne kache mu roots. Okay. Why kola ko ino olumolo lwakolelanga ko ino wine?
Hata mko kwa angalio. Aliyo mata mwata ezya kolanga fuanga saboni.
Ndo mnandi wewe. Wewe wayi kholela ko wayi mwabelenga nendo omundu ali nakolanga 1 acre farm ali khanesinano ekasi ino wasomela wayi. Kukhola bino kukhola bwa bindu bya agriculture bino olamanye ina agriculture pako manye no okhamanyile tasanyala ta no newe buchuzi no wanyola wayi no bayi mulanga abantu ba 1 acre bamulanga ho namwe. No bandu bakalisa bamanyile kasi no muserekere muno ita namwe batiti bamanyile namwe bakali bamanyile. No dela eka 1 acre fund no ya aba ya liko ne enenganga niyo mwokesya bino mukana kana muli Mwanyola khenganga mwana ekafa muno. Ye khusomya khuno chitraining chino. Oh. Okay. Nenono ngano khulome khone bakhuangile bali wakhola spray kanga no kholori baba murunganga chinga ngano khupe spray yino ni khupa yino bakhulangile khocha khupe spray yino mala wapile eka bakhurunga bariena khun kasi ngene Miasita. Okay. So this gentleman is telling me that he has done this job. He has worked with, there was a program in Bungoma called 1 Acre Fund, and they were teaching farmers modern ways of farming. And they would get these people, they have trained them on the job, how to spray, how to plant and all that. And he's telling me he has been recruited severally by the 1 Acre Fund project to do this, and therefore he knows. He says there are not many of them who have that experience, who have been trained, because he says quite a number of our people are lazy. They want easy money, and therefore they find this as a big job. They would rather hustle, so to speak, than spend all the time doing this. He says, in an acre, the people who are doing the holes can be given 200 shillings. His work that is now doing, spraying, will be given 600 shillings in an acre. So remember the other time I said 1,000, and I told you it was on the higher side. He has now confirmed that the highest he can get is 600 in an acre. And therefore now you can reconsider the cost. If 600 and 700 chemical, so that's 1,300, and you have eliminated 5,000. So you are costing now, even if the prices may not be friendly, but because the cost input had been reduced, and this is probably therefore what we should be teaching our farmers. And I'm persuaded that this should be the prerogative of the Ministry of Agriculture to do that. We can have extension officers. Now that they have no extension officers, we can actually create an app. And I think I'm going to challenge my website engineer if they can design an app that uses SMS mechanism rather than the smartphone like the one I'm using, because the farmers may not afford that. If we can come up with a small app, an information data bank that can be sent via SMS, so the farmers, just like they're using it to do their M-Pesa, to borrow Fulisa, to do M-Shwari, we can have information packed up and sent to farmers, maybe on subscription, because I don't believe in handouts, on subscription. And if the farmers can get this knowledge, you can see, instead of spending 5,000, they're spending 1,300. Indeed, the 700 to make 2,000, if it goes for subscription, still the farmers would have benefited. Now that education, that information needs to be spread out. So ministers of agriculture, governors, here we are, food security, we can achieve it. We need to be innovative in our approach to dealing with agriculture. So after same time, we shall take then a video of this farm and see how it looks. You can see now it's dirty. Intentionally, I didn't have to plow it. No tractor, no ox-drawn plows. I'm doing experiment. I'm using the chemicals, and I'll be able to document this, and we shall see the results. I've been monitoring and evaluation, project monitoring evaluation, the same thing that I teach at school, at college. I teach entrepreneurship, I teach project management, I teach strategic planning, and therefore I'll use those skills, monitoring and evaluation, to monitor this project and see the results of those chemicals. I'll then later on go on at the end when we have harvested, I'll do the costing and the pricing and see what benefits, what lessons would have learned from this plot. As you can see, I'm doing this practical, we call it action-oriented project. I am not going to go with the questionnaires, asking people probably when they are off season, when they have already harvested, then I come to ask them and they fill questionnaires, and particularly using the Likert scale, on a scale of so agree or disagree. That is a little bit of theoretical project management and project evaluations. So here I am, I'm doing it, I'm documenting it, and at the end of it, this is what we call qualitative approach to research. I'm doing it qualitatively. It's almost like a case study, because I am not going to a large number of respondents. I'm using this as a case study, and at the end of it, I will generate hypothesis, I'll generate mini theory, which can now therefore be repeated with quantitative approach to research, and therefore we may now get different results or better results or add value to it. So now this is my qualitative approach to research, where I've taken one small case which is not representative as of now, but the aim is at the end of the project I should be able to generate hypothesis. I did not start with a hypothesis, because when I start with a hypothesis, it will bias me towards proving or disapproving that hypothesis. I came out just to discover. I'm doing a case study, and I will develop some hypothesis at the end of the case study, develop a mini theory, and therefore quantitative researchers will pick that hypothesis and they will now go out to test it. They can test it now on a representative sample, but you see, qualitative research would have handed quantitative research something to do. That's why we always say, or I always say, qualitative and quantitative go hand in hand. There are some colleagues of mine who say, at higher levels, PhD, for example, we should not do qualitative, we should do quantitative. Case studies are not recommended. But I'm saying there are two key differences between qualitative and quantitative. Qualitative research generates, the end of qualitative research is to generate a theory, to generate a hypothesis. So we don't start with hypothesis in qualitative, pure qualitative research. But quantitative research is to test hypothesis. And therefore, we can start with hypothesis in quantitative research. Now, a good hypothesis is one that have come from this qualitative research. There are some of us who may imagine the hypothesis in the head. Again, research bias. But when you pick a hypothesis that was developed after qualitative research like this one, then you are simply now adding value to the research. And it's like a value chain. A qualitative researcher goes out, does exploratory surveys, generates a hypothesis. A quantitative researcher picks up that hypothesis, tests it in now on a representative sample, and therefore now we can do policy implications, and we can now generate policies. So, if you ask me, qualitative research must be done at the highest level, because those are the people, PhD people, who will be able to generate hypotheses, to generate theories out of what they observed in the field. Quantitative research, just testing the hypothesis, if you ask me, I'll say it should be both at PhD, but more, even at lower levels. So scholars who reprimand some of my PhD students that qualitative research, exploratory research is not for that PhD level, I think we are being a little more theoretical, and that theory is not helping us. So let's embrace both quantitative and qualitative. Let's make sure that we do our qualitative research to feed quantitative research. Both of them go hand in hand. It's like a relay. You finish one and you give it to another. So we stop here and we shall watch this. I'll do my monitoring and evaluation, and then my next documentary, my next video will be the results of this spraying and the determination of these beans. Thank you.